everybody, and welcome to another board game discussion video. Today's video is all about rules, and more specifically rule books. Before I really get started though, I would like to invite you, if you haven't done so already, to take a look at my Facebook, my Twitter page, as well as my Instagram and my Patreon. All my social media stuff. I do giveaways, fun articles, all sorts of cool things, and if you back me on Patreon, then you can see videos ahead of time and all sorts of other really cool content. That said, getting into rule books. I have discussed rules in general on my channel a little bit, mostly on like with my reviews and how the rule books explain how a game is played and stuff like that, but I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it and talk about what I personally enjoy and don't enjoy, and more importantly get all of your guys' opinion on rule books. What do you like to see? What do you not like to see? So essentially what I've got here is the old tradition of the Western, the good, the bad, and the ugly. When I'm talking about these, I want to talk about things that I like, things that level up a rule book, so to speak. That's the good thing. So you've got really good technical merit, you've got a book that really explains the game efficiently and does it well, you've got demonstrations for how to play the game, you've got images showing you how pieces move, what pieces look like, setup, all of that kind of stuff. The bad is where technically it's correct, we do see how to play the game and all that kind of stuff, but it's kind of blech. It's just meh. And then the ugly is exactly what it sounds like, where it's poorly written, it doesn't really explain anything really well, and it's just more confusing than anything else. So that said, getting started with the good, I have two examples here that I wanted to mention. I've got Alchemists and Dungeon Lords. Now, Dungeon Lords in particular was written and designed by a guy named Vlada Chavito. I'm sorry, I do not know how to pronounce the man's name, but he is a game design genius. He did Dungeon Lords, Dungeon Pets, Galaxy Trucker, Mage Knight, a whole bunch of other games. And essentially he is really kind of famous for how he writes rule books. In this particular case, I love it because the book itself is actually a dialogue between two characters. So for me, it actually keeps me interested because it reads kind of like a book. It reads like an actual dialogue between characters in a novel type of thing. And there's tons of pictures all over the place, but the best part of the entire thing that I really, really love is it's somewhere in here. Essentially, here we go. So there is a portion on this where it explains to you to stop. And it says, stop reading the rules, that's it, you're done. And you'll see here on the very last page, or near the very last page, there's an entire thing that says full rules. Because essentially what this game has you do is initially you're just playing the sort of base game, you're playing the basic version. Because the fact is that this and Alchemist, to a lesser extent, are fairly complex, so it's difficult to play. And I love the fact that Dungeon Lords does that. As for Alchemists, the really big thing that I love about this game is the humor. Now, I'm a scientist, I love science, and I love seeing science-themed games, and this is no exception. The thing that I truly love about this game, though, is all of the little references to like how we publish papers, what it means, all of that kind of stuff. It's absolutely hilarious. In addition to the fact that this does a really wonderful job of explaining how to play the game, because this is a fairly complex game. You're talking about your logical deduction, your logical reasoning, so there's a lot going on with it, and the book does a really good job of explaining the technical aspects in a relatively simple way so that it's really understandable and easy to follow. So those are my good examples. Next up for the bad. Bad, like I said, is technically correct but uninteresting. So we get all of the information, but it's really boring, and more often than not it can be really difficult to find things later on. That's arguably the most frustrating thing. I do have one example for this, and that is Twilight Struggle. If you guys have seen my channel before, you know I love me some Twilight Struggle. It's one of my favorite games, and the fact is though that the rulebook is awful. I mean, again, it is a rule book. It has all the rules in it. It is written up so that you can see what the rules are. But look at this page, for example. You see all of this here? This is just a wall of text. That's all it is. It's just pure text about how things work. It's horrible. It's absolutely terrible. It's not fun to read. It's not easy to read. It's even more difficult to remember. and it is absolutely painful. One of the nice things about this book is that in the back they actually have an example of a tournament play and what two people were doing, and then they've got histories of the cards and everything. That's why the book is so thick. But the fact is that while it's written relatively well and it gets across all the information, it is just a pain in the butt to read the book itself. So it gets really boring, and it can be really difficult to find some specific thing that you're trying to find, even though it's indexed similarly to an outline. Now, that may be just generally the case for war games. I haven't played very many, but I know they tend to be a little bit more dry. So maybe that's just the nature of the beast. However, I do not enjoy it. One saving grace for Twilight Struggle specifically, though, are these guys right here. It does have these player cards, these little player helpers, that really do a wonderful job of essentially telling you exactly what you need to do, when you need to do it, and all that good stuff. Last but not least is the ugly of rule books, and these are rule books that are not written well and or just don't convey how the game functions very well. And I did a review of a game not too long ago that is rather guilty of this, which is The Cohort. Now, I mentioned in my review video that the rulebook is very small. That is literally the entire rulebook. I just showed it to you. It is a single page that is folded once. That's all it is. The problem is that there's nothing about, it's difficult to tell what is where, what goes where, and on top of that, the cards are not explained very well. A lot of the interactions are not explained very well. It's just incredibly frustrating to read through something like this. Now, with a game like King of Tokyo or even King of New York, you can have a short, concise rule book that functions really well. But when you have something like this is just difficult to wrap my head around, and it's frustrating, especially for a game that's so simple. You shouldn't need to have something that's really complex. You shouldn't have to do it. It doesn't really matter. But I do love games that are complex, that do strike that nice balance between having a rule book that gives the information and is still enjoyable to read. That said, that's enough ranting and rambling for me. I hope that you guys enjoyed this video, but again, I want to know what you all think. What are your favorite rule books? Why do you enjoy them? Is it because it's a specific IP that you enjoy? Like for me, the Portal game has a pretty decent one. Captain Sonar does a good job. A lot of board games that I have do well with theming the rule book around what the game is about. So I personally enjoy that. But I'm curious what you guys have to say. Do you prefer online rules? Do you make your own little cheat sheets, all that kind of stuff? I do that on occasion myself. But with that, thank you very, very much for watching, and I will see you next time.